So are you ready for the word? Let's turn to Enoch chapter 10, but we're going to go back to chapter 9 for just a moment. There's a phrase in chapter 9 we need to acknowledge before we move on. Let me find it here. Chapter 9, let's begin in verse 1. And then Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel looked down from heaven and saw much blood being shed upon the earth, and all lawlessness being wrought upon the earth. And they said one to another, the earth made without inhabitant cries the voice of their crying up to the gates of heaven. And now to you, the holy ones of heaven, the souls of men make their suit, saying, bring our cause before the Most High. Now notice in verse 3, the souls of men begin to plead their cause to the holy ones. We dealt with that last week in great depth, that until they did that, then there was nothing that Yahweh was going to do, okay? But they made their cry in verse 3. But look back at verse 2. This is Gabriel, Raphael, Uriel, Michael discussing it. They said to one another, the earth made without inhabitant cries the voice of their crying up to the gates of heaven. This does not mean the inhabitants of earth. The inhabitants of earth is covered in verse 3. This is talking about earth itself. I kept reading that verse and wondering if it had been mistranslated because it seemed strange to me. But yesterday, as I was reading it again, I remembered Romans chapter 8. What's written in Romans 8, I think, is another indication that those who wrote the epistles were very familiar with and often referred to the book of Enoch. Let's go read it, and then we'll come back to Enoch 10. Enoch 10, Romans 8, verse 18. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. You agree with that? For the earnest expectation of the creature waits for the manifestation of the sons of Yahweh. The word creature there, if you look down in verse 22, you'll see the exact same words translated creation. I think we read the word creature and we think of beings, but the word is ktisis, and it means the original formation or the creation, and that's the reason it's translated creation down in verse 22. So anywhere we see creature, we're going to use the more correct word, creation. So let's start again, verse 18. I reckon that the sufferings of the present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory which shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creation waits for the manifestation of the sons of Yahweh. Manifestation is a disclosure or a revealing or a manifesting of something. Verse 18 makes it clear that the manifestation is of us, those who have surrendered to Yahweh through Yeshua our Messiah. We suffer now, but that suffering is not worthy to be compared to the glory that's going to be revealed in us when our sonship of Yahweh is manifested. But read on. For the creation was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who has subjected the same in hope. The word for means that I'm fixing to give you a reason for what I just said and what I'm about to say. Verse 19 just said that creation had an earnest expectation. What would creation be longing for? What would it be expecting? It is longing for the glory that's going to be revealed in us. Because in the fall of man, creation was made subject to vanity. Vanity means uselessness or unprofitableness. It became useless and unprofitable in its estimation. Creation has many more uses than we are aware of. Trees and herbs and flowers and plants and grasses have many more uses that are for now locked away. They know their potential and their purpose is greater than what they are exhibiting right now, but right now this is all they can do. Creation is longing for the day that you and I are revealed as the sons of Yahweh so that they can be restored to their original purpose. The next verse says so. Verse 21. Because the creation itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of Yahweh. It shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption. Creation is under bondage right now. It will be until we are glorified and revealed to be the sons of Yahweh. Not only will we be released into a glorious liberty, creation will be released into a glorious liberty. Freedom for them and us to return to the original version that we were meant to be. Verse 22. For we know that the whole creation groans and travails in pain together until now. Verse 22 troubles me. Listen how it starts out. For we know. Paul states what he states in verse 22 as if it were common knowledge, and we should have already known this before he told us. I graduated from St. Clair County High School, a small school in Odenville, Alabama. I left St. Clair County High School and enrolled at Samford University. When I enrolled in Samford University, I quickly became aware of what I was not taught in high school. I would be sitting in literature classes, and the professor would say things like, he'd name off a book and he'd say, well, you should have read this in the 8th grade. Or he'd name off another book or refer to another book and he'd say, you covered this, I'm sure, in your 10th grade lit class. And I'm sitting there thinking, I've never heard of these books, much less read them. Everybody else in the class, it seemed, was sitting around shaking their head, yeah, we read that in 8th grade. And I'm thinking, the only thing I read all the way from junior high to high school was Animal Farm. That's the only book I read. And that wasn't being studied, okay? So I felt lost and unprepared in many of my classes at Samford. Well, sometimes when I read the scriptures, I feel the same way. Here, Paul says, for we know. And I want to say, well, how am I supposed to know that the trees and the flowers and the herbs and the grass and the rivers and the lakes are all groaning in and travailing in pain? Until he told me I didn't know. Then I read the book of Enoch and I see. That's how I was supposed to know it was written there. Enoch tells us that it is groaning and travailing in pain. Enoch records that the first voices for redemption and rescue after Genesis 6 was the voices of creation itself. The voice of the earth itself went up to Michael and Uriel and Raphael and Gabriel and said, deliver us from all of this. Then men cried. Paul's referencing that here in verse 22. They long to be set free from the uselessness they feel. Let's read on verse 23. And not only they, but ourselves also, which have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, to wit, the redemption of our body. For we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man sees, why does he yet hope for it? We groan because we're waiting for our adoption. Here's the point I wanted to make before we move out of Enoch chapter 9. I don't know how to describe it, explain it, or the proper words to use to speak of it, but I think we need to become aware that we've been given an amazing place to live. Yeah. We're surrounded by an amazing creation. It sees us as the one who has dominion over it. And it knows that it can't fulfill its full purpose until we do. Right. And so it's longing and yearning for us to receive our glory so that it can step into its glory. The experiments that have been run showing how plants can hear and respond to us cannot be ignored. Go to YouTube and just look it up. Two plants bought from the same place in the same soil, set in the same environment, on the same windowsill, watered the same amount. One of them is spoken to in love, one of them is spoken to in hate. Within days, the one spoken to in hate will begin to wither and it will die. I saw a couple of experiments run where the point is that water is living. You ever heard the phrase living water? Water is living. And so people have taken rice and cooked it in water. And then they have bought 3 containers that they could seal. And they take the same amount of rice and put it in each container and seal them. And write on one, love, on one, hate, and on one, ignore. Set them in the same environment. And every day, go to one and speak words of love. Go to one and speak words of hate. Just ignore the other one. In the last experiment I watched, the guy went back after 9 weeks of doing this. The one that he spoke love to looked the same as it did the day he put it in the container. The one he spoke hate to was black and rotted. The one he ignored was becoming black and rotting. The point being that this creation that's around us is amazing. And it has more potential than we can even imagine at this point. And it recognizes that you and I have dominion over it. It's waiting for us to be glorified. If it's that excited about us being glorified, we ought to get that excited too. It reveals to us, I think, that our dominion given to us in Genesis 1 was given. It reveals to us the life that exists in things that we think of as just things. There is life there. And it reveals to us the potential that's locked inside of our creation. Now let's go to chapter 10. I think that's on page 31 in your book. So, and it begins then with the word then also. After creation cried out for help, and after mankind cried out for help, and after Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel took those petitions before Yahweh, then Yahweh revealed His plan and how it was to be executed. Before we read the plan, let me ask you, what started this need for Yahweh's interaction? What started it? Why is the earth crying out, and why is mankind crying out? And now Yahweh has to step in and do something. Say again?
The fall.
The fall.
Rebellion.
Y'all are so very good. Because a lot of times, because of what we just read, we want to focus back on Semyaza and what the watchers did. We want to go back to Enoch 6 and we want to go back to Genesis 6. But Yahweh goes back to Genesis 3. Because what happened in Genesis 3 is what allowed Genesis 6 to take place. If Genesis 3 had never happened, Genesis 6 couldn't have happened. If Genesis 3 had never happened, Enoch 6 could have never happened. And that's the reason when Yahweh starts executing His plan here, Semyaza is not the first one He deals with. Actually, Semyaza is the last one He deals with. He has other concerns greater than Semyaza. Now, he's going to be dealt with harshly, and his associates. But there are other things that set in motion this pollution and destruction of the earth before they ever got here. All right? Chapter 10, verse 1. Then said the Most High, the Holy and Great One, spake and sent Uriel to the son of Lamech. Who is the son of Lamech? Noah. And he said to him, go to Noah, and tell him in my name, hide yourself, and reveal to him the end that is approaching, that the whole earth will be destroyed, and a deluge is about to come upon the whole earth, and will destroy all that is on it. And now instruct him that he may escape, and his seed may be preserved for all the generations of the world. So the first thing to do is to provide salvation and rescue for mankind through the righteous man Noah. So that's the first thing Yahweh does. It was necessary to first, and it says it there, preserve the seed, that he may escape, verse 3, and his seed may be preserved. The seed had to be preserved. The seed war started in Genesis 3. Yahweh first and foremost made sure that his seed in the earth is preserved. Malachi 2 tells us that the reason that Yahweh ordained marriage was that it was for the purpose of perpetuating his seed in the earth. It's no secret that the wicked one has worked from Genesis 3 into this very day to try and corrupt the seed through DNA manipulation and other means. Genetic modification. Yahweh will not allow hybrids to have the earth that he created for his seed. First, though, here's what we see. Salvation of man came through Yahweh's instruction to Noah. So the instruction is, warn Noah of what's coming, tell him what to do. The next instruction is, bind Azazel and cast him into darkness. And again, Yahweh said to Raphael, bind Azazel, hand and foot, cast him into the darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein. And place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment, he shall be cast into fire. So it's speaking of a future judgment, right? Now, stop right there for a moment in verse 6. This is speaking, as I just said, of a future event. I want to leave here and go speak of that future event, but as I said earlier, in my spirit I felt that I was told to deal with the information given to us, and I think we'll see clearly why in just a moment. It was put in this order for a reason, so we're going to stay with the order that it's given to us. Now when you read verse 6 again, notice that it refers to a third thing the archangels are to do, and that is to heal the earth. Bind Azazel, and then now the third thing, heal the earth. Verse 6, the last part of verse 6. Heal the earth which the angels have corrupted. Proclaim the healing of the earth, that they may heal the plague, and that all the children of men may not perish through all the secret things that the watchers have disclosed and have taught their sons. And the whole earth has been corrupted through the works that were taught to Azazel. To him ascribe all sin. I don't understand that verse as well as I wish, but I can read. And it plainly says, heal the earth, proclaim the healing of the earth, that they may heal the plague. Heal the earth, proclaim the healing of the earth, that they may heal the plague. I think the earth reference and the they reference is to creation and not to us. All of creation is at work to make sure that we do not perish. If you have thoughts or insights on that, I'd love to hear them. This I strongly suspect. What we call nature is not sitting by passively waiting for our redemption. Right. What we call nature is not sitting by passively waiting on me and you to be redeemed. Paul said in Romans 8, it's groaning in travail. Enoch said it cried out. All right? It refuses to be passive. You remember Yeshua making his triumphant entry? I think we mentioned this before in our study here. Making his triumphant entry into Jerusalem, and the scribes and the Pharisees wanted him to quiet the crowd down. Right. Please tell them to be quiet. And then what did Yeshua say? Yeah, y'all don't want me to do that. Y'all don't want me to quieten them down. Because if I quieten them down, the rocks are going to start shouting Hosanna to the highest. And if you think you got a problem with them shouting it, you're going to have real problems when the rocks start singing it out. When the rocks start shouting it out. So he understood that creation wasn't going to sit by passively and watch him enter into Jerusalem either. Creation is not passively watching or waiting for our redemption. Now, it says there, to Azazel ascribe all sin. That's why there is an Azazel goat during Yom Kippur. All sin being ascribed to Azazel. So let's go over the three things we've been told so far. Yahweh's plan was warn Noah, bind Azazel, and to him ascribe all sin, heal the earth that it may heal the plague. Now the fourth thing we read, verse 9. And to Gabriel said Yahweh, proceed against the bastards and the reprobates and against the children of fornication, and destroy the children of fornication and the children of the watchers from among men, and cause them to go forth, send them one against the other, that they may destroy each other in battle. For length of days shall they not have, and no request that they, i.e. their fathers, it says, make of these shall be granted unto their fathers on their behalf, for they hope to live an eternal life, and that each of them will live 500 years. So number 4 is Yahweh dealing primarily with the hybrids, also called Nephilim, and then also with the watchers who follow some Yahweh, we'll see in a moment. But right now, his primary dealing is with the hybrids. He does mention the watchers having some intercession that's not going to be heard, but his primary concern right now is the hybrids. Now, I love the way this verse begins. Gabriel is told to proceed. I like that word. It conveys to me that Gabriel didn't have to go get ready to do this. He had been getting ready a long time. He had been getting ready ever since those watchers descended. He'd been getting ready for a long, he's just waiting for his commander to tell him what to do. He's sitting on ready. That's the reason Yahweh didn't have to turn to him and say, okay, Gabriel, I need you to get ready. Here's some things I need you to do. He just turned to Gabriel and said, proceed. Get after it. Gabriel was to take care of these hybrids. Now listen to how Yahweh describes them. He describes them as bastards, reprobates, children of fornication, and children of the watchers. Bastards, reprobates, children of fornication, children of the watchers. So Yahweh has no mercy upon these. They're intruders. He has no mercy upon these intruders, and he shouldn't have any mercy upon them. They are intruders whose mission was to destroy earth, and their mission was to destroy mankind. Their mission was to genetically modify every plant and every being on the earth so that Yahweh no longer had seed there. They were enemies of Yahweh, and they were dealt with as enemies of Yahweh. This is how you can spot a false teacher. A false teacher will always try to motivate you to love that which shouldn't be loved, and to love those who shouldn't be loved. Learn from Yahweh what you are to love and not love. The scriptures tell us he that's a friend of the world is at enmity with Yahweh. In running around trying to be friends with depravity, religious-minded people have positioned themselves as enemies of Yahweh. And most don't care. Because loving everybody makes them feel spiritual, and so it doesn't matter what the scriptures say, they're just going to love everybody anyway. Yahweh said to Gabriel, no petition or prayer from them will be heard or granted. He said they want to live eternally, but they're not going to. And then Yahweh said to Gabriel, stir them up, cause them to go to war against one another. Instead of destroying men and instead of destroying the earth, turn their destructive hearts against one another. And that is what literally happened. The Greeks recorded this history as known as what? Clash of the Titans. There used to be on the earth hybrid beings, part human, part watcher, part angel. Massive in size and in strength. And when I say massive in size, I'm not talking about Goliath size. I'm not talking about Og of Bashan size. I'm talking about the cedars of Lebanon size. I'm talking about 36 to 150 feet. These are not the things of fantasy. These are not the things of fiction. These beings literally existed, and they had to be destroyed. And they destroyed themselves because Gabriel turned them against one another. Genesis 6 refers to them as men of renown. They were thought by the heathen to be gods. They were so big and so mighty. Thought by the heathen to be gods, and they were given names that still linger today. Hercules and Apollo and Zeus and some of these other names that referred to these men of renown that were born in that day and time. Ahura Mazda. Their destruction and death was instigated by Gabriel at the command of Yahweh. They annihilated one another, and now their spirits have nowhere to go. And we'll be given more information about that as we read on in the book of Enoch in another day. For now we read that Yahweh called them reprobates and bastards. That means they were unredeemable and illegitimate intruders on earth. So, warn Noah, heal the earth, bind Azazel, instigate a war among the Nephilim, and then, finally, the fifth thing, bind Simyaza and his associates. And Yahweh said unto Michael, go bind Simyaza and his associates who have united themselves with women so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons have slain one another and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and of their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated. Notice that they weren't bound until they see the destruction of their offspring. Why did they rebel against Yahweh and come down and take the daughters of men? They wanted offspring. And they saw the daughters of men as being capable of producing that for them. They didn't have that in the spirit realm. So they came here to produce offspring. Yahweh does not want them bound until they see the futility of that foolish decision. Whatever a man has to forsake Yahweh for in order to get is a foolish decision. Whatever a man has to rebel against Yahweh for so that he can have, that's a foolish decision. Whatever Yahweh has written that a man has to ignore in order to live like he wants to live or believe what he wants to believe, it's a foolish decision to rebel against Yahweh and what is written in order to have that. It's futile. And that's what Yahweh is showing Simyaza and his associates. Everything you did was so you could have offspring. Now you're going to see how foolish that decision was because your offspring are going to be destroyed. You will have no offspring. Nothing that we do in rebellion against Yahweh stands. It's all futile. It's a foolish choice to make for anyone to rebel against him. As to the 70 generations, again, that's information that we're given here, but it's not expounded upon, and so therefore that's all I'm going to say about it today. Because the purpose of chapter 10 is not to explain the end time events to us. Here's the message for the day. The purpose of chapter 10 is not to explain the end time events to us. The purpose of chapter 10 is to reveal to us the mighty power of Yahweh to rescue, to heal, and to redeem. And to warn anyone who would ever try to rebel and fight against him. That's a sufficient message for the day. Do not rebel because it won't go well. Notice that when Peter and Jude refer to Enoch, they don't refer to Enoch trying to explain end time events. When they refer to Enoch, they seek to use what is written there to warn us that rebellion against Yahweh never goes well for anyone, no matter who they are. It doesn't matter if they're Azazel. It doesn't matter if they're Shemyaza and his associates. It doesn't matter if it's their offspring. It never goes well for anybody who rebels against him. He is supreme in power. And so that's the reason that Peter, that's the reason that Jude, that's the reason that Enoch writes in chapter 10, is saying to all future generations, it won't go well for you either if you rebel against Yahweh. Do not rebel, it won't go well. In those days, verse 18 there, this is speaking of a future event. They shall be led off to the abyss of fire, and to the torment and the prison in which they shall be, notice this is future, they shall be confined forever. And whosoever shall be condemned and destroyed will from thenceforth be bound together with them to the end of all generations. Matthew 25:41 again says this, and Yeshua speaking said, and then shall he say also to them on his left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. A perfect mirror of what's written here in Enoch chapter 10. That there is an abyss, there is an everlasting fire that's made for Shemyaza and his associates. But everybody who rebels against Yahweh will be cast into that same fire. And I just lost my connection on Facebook. It doesn't go well for anybody who refuses Yahweh. There is no neutral ground either, and we need to be aware of that. Either you are serving Yahweh or you are serving his adversary. And if you're serving his adversary, it makes you an adversary. Both Enoch and Yeshua both say that those who will be condemned in the coming judgment will be cast into the fire that was made for Shemyaza. Realize that Yahweh is seeing way into the future too. I want you to realize that as we, let me go over here. When we read on here in chapter 10, I want you to realize that Yahweh is seeing into the future. He is seeing things, he is doing things that it's necessary for him to do that day. Doing things necessary for him to do that day. But he's speaking of days way off in the future. He is seeing the end from the beginning. When we read the rest of this chapter, what we're going to see is that we're not there yet. He's describing things that we haven't yet got to. But we rejoice knowing this, that as he has said, so shall it be. Right? So you in chapter 10? Let's pick up reading in verse 16. Destroy all wrong from the face of the earth, and let every evil work come to an end, and let the plant of righteousness and truth appear, and it shall prove a blessing. The works of righteousness and truth shall be planted in truth and joy forevermore. And then, so that's a future event, then shall all the righteous escape, and shall live till they beget thousands of children. And all the days of their youth and their old age shall they complete in peace. So you're not only going to beget children and grandchildren, or great-grandchildren, or great-great-grandchildren, but great-great-great-great-grandchildren and great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. And it goes on. That's a promise from Yahweh. And then shall the whole earth be tilled in righteousness, and shall be planted with trees and be full of blessing. Trees are going to be returned to their full potential. Verse 19. And all desirable trees shall be planted on it, and they shall plant vines on it. And the vine which they plant thereon shall yield wine in abundance. And as for all the seed which is sown thereon, each measure of it shall bear 1,000. Any of you ever planted a seed that didn't come up, or planted a seed and seeds and some of them only came up? Well, they're not yet able to, they are bound in corruption. But there's coming a day that they'll be set free just like we are. Each measure of olive shall yield 10 presses of oil. And cleanse thou the earth from all oppression, and from all unrighteousness, and from all sin, and from all godlessness, and all the uncleanness that is wrought upon the earth. Destroy from off the earth. Verse 21. And all the children of men shall become righteous. All. And all nations shall offer adoration and shall praise me. All nations. And all shall worship me. And the earth shall be cleansed from all defilement, and from all sin, and from all punishment, and from all torment. And I will never again send them upon it from generation to generation and forever. So you see that it's speaking clearly here of a future day when things are going to be much, much better. Now look in chapter 11. And in those days I will open the store chambers of blessings which are in the heaven, so as to send them down upon the earth over the work and labor of the children of men. And truth and peace shall be associated together throughout all the days of the world, throughout all the generations of men. We are living in days much like the days of the prophets. We're living in days much like the days of the Maccabees, where truth is actually punished. Truth is hated. Truth is despised. Yahweh is speaking of a day here where truth and peace shall be associated together. Right now, for the most part, when you embrace truth, you embrace everything but peace. You embrace truth, you find yourself in conflict with those of your own household, with those of your own family, with those in your own neighborhood, with those that you work with. You find yourself at odds with all kinds of people. You embrace truth and try to walk in truth and seek to walk in truth and seek to share truth, and you're hated and despised and rejected. Sometimes we act surprised by that, and yet Yeshua told us not to be. He said it's going to happen, and He said when it does happen, rejoice and be exceedingly glad. That's hard to do. But He said it. He said, be exceedingly glad, for so persecuted they the prophets that were before you. Because we're living in a day right now that's not like this one spoke of in Enoch chapter 11. Truth and peace are not associated together right now. Right. But there's coming a day when to be associated with truth is to be associated with peace. And so that's what I see the message being as we read Enoch chapter 10 and Enoch chapter 11. I see the message being that yeah, we suffer and we groan because of our suffering. Whatever that suffering may be, we groan because of it. But the Scriptures are encouraging us to turn from groaning about our sufferings to realizing that our sufferings aren't even worthy to be compared with the glory that's going to be revealed in us. And so if we're going to groan, rather than groaning about the way it is, start groaning, crying out for the way it's going to be. Seeking and looking forward to and fixing our mind upon the peace that is coming, upon the victory that is coming, when every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. That we start looking at and declaring and thanking Yahweh that He has said from the beginning the way it's going to be in the end, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop Him. Amen. Hallelujah. So we groan within ourselves waiting for the adoption. We groan within ourselves waiting for the adoption. And boy, a message could be preached right there too. Waiting for the adoption, to wit, that is the redemption of our bodies. Let that so be and let that so come. Hallelujah. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. As his name is put upon you, so shall he himself bless you.